I'm Jen, your local New York City guide, and welcome to Broadway. One of the top attractions is to see a Broadway show here in New York City. But you're probably wondering, how do you find those affordable tickets? What are the hacks and secrets to get budget tickets? I'm about to share all of that and more. Check out the blog post linked down below. Subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and let the show begin. First, let's start with Broadway history, secrets, and fun facts. There are 41 Broadway theaters, but only 4 are located actually on Broadway, the street. To qualify as a Broadway theater, there must be 500 seats or more, and it must be located between 40th Street and 54th Street between 6th and 8th Ave. All other theaters outside this area that are 99 seats to 499 seats are considered off-Broadway. Broadway in the 1890s was originally known as the Great White Way because it was one of the first streets ever to be fully illuminated with white electric light bulbs. Most theaters do not have an I row. Many people were disappointed when they found out that their row number 1 was actually I, and they thought it was the first row. It ended up being the 9th row. So a lot of theaters have actually just skipped I altogether. The longest-running Broadway show isn't the highest earning. I'll give you one hint. The longest-running show is the Phantom of the Opera from 1988 till today, and the second longest-running show is Chicago. 60% of Broadway audiences are female, and 60% say they purchase their tickets online. So you're probably wondering, where is the best place to sit? The orchestra, of course, is the closest to the orchestra, but I would say that the first couple of rows can sometimes be an angle looking up, so I really like the middle of the orchestra if you can afford it. I also love the aisle rows, which has a little bit more leg space because some of the seats can be a little bit cramped for especially tall people. You have a little bit more space in the aisles to tilt your legs, which is really nice. I also really like the mezzanine level, which is definitely more affordable, but the first couple of rows of the mezzanine give you that best perspective, oftentimes unobstructed with no one in front of you, and you really get to see the whole perspective of the stage and everything going on. Timing, 2 things. The cheapest tickets are usually matinees during the middle of the week, and they're usually during winter. Timing duration. Double check how long the show is because some shows can be an hour, some can be up to 3 hours. So you want to make sure that you plan ahead and you have enough time for parking or dinner reservations. Make reservations ahead of time. Many of these restaurants right before the show or after the show will be super crowded, so you really do need a reservation, and sometimes they'll even ask when your show is to make sure that you have enough time to eat and have plenty of time to get to this theater. At a TodayTix booth, you can wait in line for same-day tickets, which are really highly discounted, some of the cheapest tickets to Broadway shows. Although they do not have the most popular shows, you will find a lot of shows for about 50% off. A couple of quick tips. First of all, there are 3 locations. There is the location behind me here in Times Square, which is the most popular, and it opens earliest, but it is the only location that doesn't have next day matinee tickets. So if you're looking for that, you might want to check out the other 2 locations, which will also have a shorter line. Walking distance from this Times Square location, you can go up to the Lincoln Center location, which is sometimes a 20-minute long wait when this line is an hour long, so you can definitely save some time walking up there, getting in line there, it's shorter, and then enjoy the rest of Central Park. Or I also recommend, if you're staying downtown, to check out the downtown location in South Street Seaport. There used to be a location in Brooklyn, but just note that is now closed. Tip number 2, next day matinee tickets. I cannot stress it enough. It is really awesome that the other locations, not the Times Square location, but the Lincoln Center and the downtown South Street Seaport location, have next day matinee tickets. So if that's what you're looking for, I highly recommend you go to those other 2 locations. Tip number 3, there is a separate line for plays. So if you want to see a play and not a musical, get in that almost empty line to go see a play. There is a 7-day Fast Pass line. If you've already purchased tickets from a TodayTix booth, you can actually skip the entire line, show them your stubs, and then purchase your next discounted tickets. Tip number 5, bad weather. If there is bad weather, for example, a rainy day, a lot of times there will be almost no line. So if you're willing to wait out in the rainy cold, I highly recommend it because you'll get better tickets quicker. TodayTix App. If you don't want to stand in line, I highly recommend that you download the really helpful TodayTix App, and that is something where you can get discounted tickets the same day or even a week in advance. Lotteries. If you're feeling lucky, check online for the show you want to see and the lotteries that they have available. There are also a number of discounts for youth, student, and seniors. I've been super fortunate to see about 10 shows in the last year alone. I really love Broadway, and there's so many great shows, and there are constantly new ones opening and closing, so some of them have already closed, but I'm going to share my top 5 all-time favorite shows that I highly recommend you see. If you're super lucky, you could be one of the 46 people given a $10 ticket that is in the orchestra for Hamilton, but there are so many people that enter online digitally, it is very hard to get it. I know people who have tried for months and still not gotten it, so just in case, worst case scenario, you can always just fly to Chicago because people actually do that. If you fly to Chicago, you can get a $100 ticket in a very good seat. Compare that to sitting in the very back of this theater if you can get those tickets far enough in advance. When I was younger, I saw The Phantom of the Opera with my parents and I absolutely loved it. It is now the longest running show on Broadway. You have to check it out. It is about the phantom that haunts the Paris Opera stage and falls in love with the soprano. Don't forget to look up at the Paris Opera House chandelier replica, which has 6,000 bees and weighs 1 ton. The Lion King is the first show to hit $1 billion in revenue, and it is super family friendly. I saw it as a kid. I highly recommend it. There are 6 African languages that are spoken or sung in this play, and 232 puppets. Some are 5 inches and some are 18 feet tall. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. This is not a musical, it is a play, and it is 2 very long parts that are spaced out. So they're about 2 hours and 40 minutes each, but sometimes, depending on when you see it, they have a long break in the middle where you can have a full dinner, or even they show it the next day. It is amazing. It is truly a magical experience. If you are a devout fan, you will not like the plot. It is not about the plot. That is not why you see it. You definitely come here to see the familiar faces, to enjoy the amazing magic, and to really honestly revel at how they can even make some of the things happen that they make happen. I am not going to share all of the details because they do have a hashtag keep the secrets. So I'm not going to tell you all the secrets, but come and enjoy it because it feels more like a magic show. It is absolutely stunning. I really seriously loved it. I was in awe. It was a long show, but it definitely went really quickly. Highly recommend it. So come here, see it. Yeah, I guess that's all I can say because there's a bunch of secrets that I'm not supposed to tell you. So come see it. Frozen. This new musical shares a beautiful story between 2 princesses and sisters. It made history as Elsa wore pants, not a dress, in the beginning of the 2nd act. The magical icicle scenes and familiar music make it a great show for kids and adults. And now what you've all been waiting for, an interview with 2 Broadway stars. Yes, I put on a little extra glitter, a little extra glam, because these guys are killing it. They are so cool. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see them on Broadway again. I actually met one of them in a Broadway show. So I was watching a Broadway show. I noticed that there was this one guy, he knew what was gonna happen next. You could tell he's watched this many times. He knows the routine. I was like, oh, I bet you he's in the show, to my friend. I was like, I wonder if he's in the show. And I ended up asking him. I was like, hey, I noticed, I feel like you know what's gonna happen next. And he's like, yeah, actually, I'm gonna be in the next show. So he was actually in the show right after that performance, and it was so cool to meet him and meet his significant other. They are both so amazing. I honestly, they are goals. They are hashtag goals because they are killing it on Broadway. They're a beautiful story. You know what? I'm not gonna give it away. You just need to keep watching because this interview is one of the coolest things ever. They are killing it. And yeah, okay, let's just cut to the interview.
I'm Clay Thompson.
And I'm Christopher Rice.
And I just closed King Kong on Broadway.
And I just closed the musical Pretty Woman on Broadway on the same day.
And up next, I'm choreographing a production of Matilda in Boston.
Which he was a part of the original Broadway cast of Matilda, so that's pretty fun. And I'm currently working on an upcoming Christmas special. That's going to be a Christmas musical that's going to be playing at the same theater near Boston called Taffy Christmas Live.
I'm from upstate New York.
And I'm originally from Oklahoma, but now we're both Manhattanites.
Yeah, past 7 years.
Yeah. When you qualify someone as a New Yorker, it's when they hit the point of wanting to yell at somebody on the subway, or being like, oh, the city smells great the first day of spring, but then the next day having to deal with it smelling like urine. Yeah. So that's kind of when I hit the New Yorker mark, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Auditioning in New York can be crazy. There are thousands and thousands of people that are in New York City that want to be on Broadway. So my first audition for Newsies, which was my Broadway debut, there were hundreds of boys, and we danced and we sang and we did scenes from the show. And at the end of the day, the next day I started rehearsal for Newsies. So it can be months long, and it can also happen overnight.
I made my Broadway debut in the Book of Mormon here in New York, and there's one song, it's the second song in the show, it's called 2 by 2, and it's like literally pairs of people. And I was a swing, so I covered 7 different roles in the show. And I kind of forgot who I was on for, and I wound up in the final pose with 3 guys, leaving my partner just to be 1 guy. So the song was called 2 by 2, and I guess that night it should have been called 3 by 1 because I messed up.
A couple nights before I made my Broadway debut, Hurricane Sandy hit New York, and I did not get a put-in, which is your rehearsal for someone who's replacing in a show. So I never did the show in my costume. So the first time I did that was during my Broadway debut, and I ripped my pants open in one of the big dance numbers, and it was so embarrassing, but the show goes on, live theater.
A lot of Broadway theaters are rather small backstage, even though they seem huge from where the audience sits. Backstage are often really small. So the set pieces that you'll see on stage, when they come off stage to the wings where the audience can no longer see them, they usually hook them up and they fly them up. So when you walk off stage, it's huge, like thousands and thousands of pounds. These set pieces are hanging above you at all times.
My favorite place to sit when I see a Broadway show is definitely in the front of the balcony or the front of the mezzanine, because you get like a bird's eye view of the stage, and you can see all the formations and the dance numbers, and you're still close enough to see the actors' faces.
So every Broadway show is a little different, so the best seats may depend on the show you're seeing, but you can always ask the people at the box office. I feel like center of the orchestra is like probably my favorite spot. Also the front of the balcony, people sometimes are afraid of because they feel like the balcony is really far away. Often the balcony or the mezzanine are really close, so front of the mezzanine is a great spot.
I think my favorite show on Broadway right now is called Come From Away. It's a show that is about 9/11 and the small town that all of the planes were diverted to, and it's so heartwarming and it's funny, and it's an incredible piece of theater. Everyone in the show plays like 4 or 5 people the whole show, and you really care about every single character they play. It's a really good piece of theater.
One of my favorite Broadway shows of all time is the musical Thoroughly Modern Millie, and the guy who was the lead in that, his voice is unlike any other voice in musical theater today, or ever really. His name's Gavin Creel, and we actually got to do the Book of Mormon together in New York, and he had done the tour and done the show in London, and they announced he was coming to New York to play the role on Broadway, and I was so stoked. It turns out he's the loveliest guy. He's a leader on stage, off, and it was just one of those experiences when you're so glad you get to meet your heroes, because he just exceeded all my expectations.
Ever since I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be a performer. I went through a little bit where I wanted to be in the Olympics as a gymnast, but from day one I was like, I want to be on stage, and that's all I wanted to do. So I feel so lucky to get to do it now.
I feel like everybody has a really unique path to get to where they end up on Broadway, and I feel like mine had a few more roadblocks earlier on than some. I auditioned for colleges for musical theater, and I got in like nowhere. So it was really tough for me because all my friends that I was studying with in high school had scholarships to like great schools, and I didn't even get in. So that was one moment where I had to say, do I want to keep doing this? And I chose to risk it all and keep pushing. So eventually I wound up at a school for musical theater, and I was really happy there, getting to study what I love. And it all paid off because my very first week in the city, I moved to New York on a Friday, and then Monday morning I auditioned for the Broadway first national tour of West Side Story, along with Clay, who that's where we met. And we both got it, and it was my first New York audition, and I finally had my big break. So we met in auditions for West Side Story, and we got put into the show together. So we both replaced the pre-existing actors that were playing the roles at the same time. So we got to know each other in rehearsals, and then we had our put-in city, then we got to open in Dallas, Texas, and sparks flew kind of early, and we've actually been together ever since.
So when we were on the national tour of West Side Story, we were actually playing Newark, New Jersey, and there's a scene in the second act right before the song Officer Krupke, if you know the show. And Officer Krupke didn't come on stage when he was supposed to. So the next song is called Officer Krupke. So it was just the two of us on stage, and we had to improv an entire scene about why we were about to sing the song Officer Krupke. It was so stressful, and it felt like it was like 45 minutes when it probably was like maybe 45 seconds. And we're getting married on the 11th. So we're getting married on our 8-year anniversary, which is so exciting. We're gonna get married in Palm Springs, California, which is, so we did a concert of West Side Story out in Palm Springs. So we're gonna like revisit our old stomping ground and get to get married
So I proposed to Clay actually last May with a full flash mob proposal.
With all of our friends dancing. It was so cool.
I sang, his parents came in and surprised him and knew all the choreography.
It was really special.
We'll send you a link to check it out.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the blog post linked down below for more details on getting the best tickets and all the links. I also have a ton more videos all around New York City. Follow me on Instagram, click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and as always, say yes to new adventures, and I'll see you next time. Bye!